I've been waiting to make this video for a while. King Viserys has never exactly been an image of ideal health. Even in the first few episodes of House of the Dragon, he looked older and wearier than a man of his age should have looked, and he consistently suffered pricks from the throne, as though the universe passed judgment on him that he was not worthy to wield the power of the Seven Kingdoms. And indeed, Viserys has done little to counter the charge that he is an indecisive ruler, or that he lacks foresight. He is rather impulsive. He does not have any grand ideal, or any ideology, or any framework for transforming the nation. He lacks the strategic sense or the creativity and imagination of a strong leader. He's neither brilliant nor particularly decisive and firm. And yet, like Ned Stark before him, he is very hard to dislike. And indeed, he might even be more sympathetic than Ned in some respects. Ned made a series of poor choices stemming from his contempt for the murky, mercurial world of Westerosi politics, refusing to play the game as he saw it. Viserys simply doesn't really know how to play the game, and he doesn't really have any inclination to do so. He does want Rhaenyra, his daughter, to rule, and his favoritism toward her is clear. I do appreciate the little detail that in the episode in which he dies, he even calls Rhaenyra his only child. This is not true, biologically speaking, but emotionally and philosophically it is. She is the one child he had with the love of his life. She is the one child he deeply cared about and poured all his emotional resources and all his time and effort into helping become his heir and become the new leader of the kingdom. Now, he did not do nearly as much as he could have. If he had started preparing Rhaenyra to take over much earlier, then number one, perhaps a lot of Rhaenyra's impulsiveness could have been toned down much earlier, and number two, he could have warded off the storm of lords that did not want Rhaenyra to rule, that were trying to spread doubt about the validity of her claim even before the birth of the young Aegon Targaryen. His presence was the last stabilizing force in Westeros. He was the dam holding the nation back from breaking down into conflict and sectarianism and rash, unadulterated egoism and greed. Now, it is also true that Viserys made war in the Seven Kingdoms inevitable. He preferred to, if not fiddle while Rome burned, then at least retreat into his lovely rooms that he preferred to be in, and build his elaborate model of the old Valyrian Empire. It's quite telling that he demonstrably preferred tending to his imagined empire that he could control very simply and comfortably, instead of the chaotic, wildfire, amorphous world of his real empire. Viserys is not a bad king in the way that Joffrey was. He's a bad king in the way that I believe 90-95% of people would be if they were given the position. He genuinely has no desire to rule, but he tries his best. While he's ignorant, that ignorance comes more from a burning desire to pretend that everything is alright and to not see the crackling divisions forming under the glistening surface of his reign than from any inherent stupidity. He is far from brilliant. He does not have an incisive strategical mind. He does not have a firm vision for what he believes Westeros should be. But he cares about his family, and when he has to exert himself to defend Rhaenyra, he tries his best. The scene wherein he hobbles into the throne room one last time to reinforce Rhaenyra's claim is telling. It is one of the most beautiful and noble scenes in the entire Game of Thrones universe, even though it is simply a rotting, decaying corpse of a man trying to get into a chair. He acknowledges to a certain extent the limitations of his reign. He has to know by this point that the regime is steadily collapsing, at least on some level, and yet he exerts himself one last time to help the person he cares the most about in the world, Rhaenyra. His faults are obvious and apparent, and the fact that he was a good man does not overshadow his horrible, blind faults as a king. But to the extent that he has failed as a king, it is more because of foolishness than outright malice. He tried to please everyone. He tried to preserve peace. He tried to uphold the legacy of the last king, the noble and august Jaehaerys Targaryen, his grandfather. What passes out of the world with Viserys is a kind of selflessness. There are few characters left who would prioritize the needs and desires of others above their own caprices. Viserys made a number of cowardly choices, refusing to understand the immediate political reality before him, and preferring instead to live in an idealized world. And yet he still demonstrates more courage and more passion and more desire to uphold the claims and images of those he loves than most of these other characters could even dream of doing. And that's a big reason why I believe we mourn him so much. Viserys dies because of the infection spreading throughout his body. But this should not be taken as a normal, mundane affliction. We should not view this primarily from a physical and epidemiological lens. We should view this psychologically and philosophically. The mirror of the person of the king and the body of the king with the people they rule is a common symbol going all the way back to Plato. Think most famously, perhaps, of the front cover of Leviathan by Thomas Hobbes, in which the sovereign is made up of the bodies of thousands of his people, demonstrating that the sovereign is not just themselves insofar as they are acting as sovereign, but an expression of the collective, united will of the people under a single mind, a single decisive form of leadership. Viserys' rotting reflects the realm, and fittingly, Viserys' rotting comes because he's not worthy of the throne. Game of Thrones can often lean away from the more overtly allegorical and fantastical. It's much closer to realism than myth, but elements like the throne rejecting him, which has its roots all the way back in Arthurian legend, is as supernatural and yet immediately poignant as any of the prophecy shenanigans that are being discussed at the moment. But if the throne, if power itself rejects Viserys, is that more of a judgment on Viserys or the concept of power itself? Viserys, under most circumstances, would have been a perfectly adequate person. He does not have any glaring faults. Just like Ned Stark was perfectly adequate for 95% of circumstances. When a king or leader sees their kingdom fall, we tend to ascribe it to their personal failings. And to a certain extent, this is inevitable, but it is also true that had everything been going perfectly and serenely, Viserys would have been able to skate by without any real consequences. He was simply unlucky enough to be the ruler of the realm at a time when the realm was growing more fractious and needed a strong, decisive ruler. He could not be that, and yet he nonetheless tried. His attempts were fleeting, bumbling, and awkward, but they were earnest nonetheless. He wanted what was best for his daughter and what was best for the realm. That's a kind of civility and tenderness that we're going to miss as the show progresses. So thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can, and you want to see more videos like this. Keep watching House of the Dragon. I adore Paddy Constantine's performance as Viserys Targaryen. It's easily the best performance in the show, a true virtuoso performance of pathos and yearning, so much futility and desperation. Anyway, tune in soon for the next analysis. It will be coming soon, promise you that. Thank you all again. Adios, comrades.